the border with Gaza. Well, the UN Security Council is expected to vote in the next few days on a resolution text that's supposed to formally end the war in Gaza and shape its future. According to the text, a Palestinian force vetted by Egypt and Israel would work alongside the International Stabilization Force, the ISF, to disarm Hamas. Turkey, meanwhile, continues to try and carve out a role in post-war Gaza. Turkey hosted a summit of Muslim leaders, excluding Egypt. And this week, Turkish officials met with Hamas official Khalil al-Hayya in Ankara. Well, to talk more about all of that, we're joined by Fredman. He's the executive director for the Misgab Institute for National Security. Thanks for being with us on the programme, Asha. So, I mean, we keep coming back to the same glaring obstacle, don't we? No one is willing to go in there and disarm Hamas, save the IDF. How long can this kind of non-ceasefire continue, do you think?
Precisely, Laura. I think you phrased that very well. And look, the draft resolution that's been tabled has the right language. It does talk about disarming Hamas. But who's supposed to disarm Hamas? The International Stabilization Force, together with Palestinian police. It's highly unlikely that any Palestinian police forces are going to be able to actually take Hamas's weapons away from it when Hamas is by far the most powerful and strongest military force on the ground. I think that Israel is looking to not, let's say, break the ceasefire certainly until as many of the hostages that were murdered, have returned. But we do need to set a deadline saying, look, if there's no movement, no progress on Hamas's disarmament in a month, 2 months, 3 months, then Israel's going to need to take matters into its own hands.
And of course, President Erdogan is kind of casting a shadow over the whole process, isn't he? He's really keen to get in there. They just hosted that meeting, of course, in Ankara. And, you know, we've had a kind of ambiguous line out of the Trump administration, haven't we? Vice President J.D. Vance saying during his recent visit to Israel, there could be some sort of constructive role for the Turks. Do you think that they are going to be involved despite Israel's concerns? And what effect would that have?
The last thing that the current Turkey and its current leadership wants is for Hamas to disarm. They're much more likely to provide Hamas with funds for arms than they are to take away Hamas's arms. We know the close relationship between President Trump and Erdogan of Turkey, and that's going to be a real challenge. I don't think Turkey is going to be able to. Turkey would be very happy to set up a military outpost in Gaza, like it hopes to do, or it's in the process of doing in Syria. Israel will not allow that. Israel will be able to prevent that if it so chooses, and I hope that it will so choose. But we can certainly see Turkey providing aid and support to Hamas and to the de facto Hamas government in Western Gaza under the guise of reconstruction. And that, I think, is something that we're likely to see.
And interesting, of course, Egypt is trying to keep Turkey out of the process as well, according to reports. Of course, we saw that they weren't invited to that summit in Ankara last week. Israel, though, is meant to work with Egypt on this new plan. Yeah, there are problems there too, aren't there? Israel has just declared the border with Egypt a closed military zone. And this is because of weapons smuggling that has been coming across the border via drones, something Israelis in the south have been complaining about for a long time now. Before I get your take on that, let's take a quick listen to Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz.
I instructed the IDF to turn the area adjacent to the Israel-Egypt border into a closed military area and to change the opening fire instructions accordingly in order to combat the drone threat that endangers the security of the state. At the same time, I agreed with the head of the Shin Bet that the Shin Bet would work to define the threat of weapons smuggling via drones as a terrorist threat, in order to allow the security agencies that are dealing with the issue to use new tools to fight the threat. Weapons smuggling via drones is part of the war in Gaza and is intended to arm our enemies, and all means must be taken to stop it. I say that we are declaring war on the threat and on all those involved in the smuggling. The rules of the game have changed, and anyone who penetrates the forbidden area will pay a heavy price and be harmed.
So essentially, this is no longer a police matter. This is an issue of national security, and that will be a source of relief, won't it, for many people, particularly in the south of Israel?
Absolutely. This has been something that the Misgab Institute for National Security, under the leadership of Mayor Ben Shabbat, has been pushing for over the last number of months. We put out a policy paper that went to all the decision makers recently on this. The distinction between what's purely criminal and what's terrorist, that false distinction, that artificial distinction, is something that should be discarded after October 7th. What we see on the ground in reality is the mixture. And yes, there are these drones carrying weapons, carrying explosives over the border. Some of them may be used for just criminal purposes. Some of them may reach Hamas. Some of them may reach extremist Muslim Brotherhood elements in Israel's south. Some of them may be for criminal purposes today, but tomorrow could be used for nationalistic terror purposes. So we're very, very happy that Defense Minister Katz, the new head of the Shin Bet, General Zini, and National Security Council, everybody has come together to make this change. Of course, this was a declaration. We have to make sure that it actually happens so that those residents in the south, in the kibbutzim in the south, no longer see these drones carrying weapons flying overhead as they take their children home from nursery.
Great. Asher, thank you very much indeed. Great to talk to you. Asher Fredman there.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for having me on. Take care.
And our senior Middle East correspondent,